train was approaching Ryabiniki station. The train stopped for only 2 minutes, but you shouldn't worry about it, since it was just me and a grandfather standing at the exit. Well, that's right. Who needs to move to such a remote place? I would never have gone there of my own free will. My mom lives here. She's already old. I've asked her to move to the city 100 times. Not mining. I'll stay in the village, and that's it. And it would be fine if the village was normal, but no. There's only 1.5 diggers living here. There is no store. I'll go to the neighboring village and take away the car stole that comes once a week. My mother, however, keeps a chicken and a small garden, so there's no need to go grocery shopping every day. But it's still not the same. It's like there's no life here. When I was a kid, at least there was a school here. There was a village store, a church, and a bus twice a day. At least some kind of civilization. There's nothing at all right now. Well, the fact that the school was closed is understandable. Young people are leaving the village, and mostly pensioners live here. Now the bus picks up the kids and takes them to the nearest village to school. But the fact is that the church would not have been closed if the population had not started to thin out rapidly. People were dying like flies at one time. And the most interesting thing is that they died at home, not even in the garden. But Mom didn't notice anything wrong, she said. And on the other hand, what's to be surprised about? The old people were the only ones left in the village, so they live out their days. The train gradually slowed down, after which it stopped smoothly. And I went out onto the platform. At the same time, he helped his grandfather down. As we walked to the village, we had some kind of simple conversation. My grandfather turned out to be a visitor. I was on my way to visit my sister. Therefore, I didn't really know anything about the high mortality rate of local residents. It's understandable. I've never met him there, so he was a rare guest here. My house was at the very end of the village, and while I was walking towards him with my bags at the ready, I remembered all the curses I knew. The heat was simply unbearable. The handles of the bags crushed all my fingers, and besides, small stones were stuffed into the sandals all the time. I had to open the gate with my feet, as both hands were busy. When the flimsy door swung open, it hit the fence with a loud sound and then hurried back to its place. I screamed at the top of my voice, standing at the entrance to the courtyard. "Hello to you too, son," was heard somewhere very close. I sighed bitterly when I saw my mother. She was drawing water from a crane, but she couldn't see it because of the fence and the thicket. Or maybe it's obvious. Maybe it's law. However, all the negativity flew out of my head when my mother and I met. Even though I've been an adult for a long time, but I don't stop loving it. Almost immediately, I went into the house where I laid out my things in my old bedroom, then sat down to dinner. My mother cooked so much that the table was literally bursting, and I ate greedily since there wasn't a crumb in my mouth in the morning. "I'm so glad you came. I thought I was going to die. The fence is honestly holding up. The roof is leaking. It's okay, it's hot right now. And it's going to rain next week. I listened to all this, but I didn't feel any compassion. On the contrary, some kind of anger was boiling inside. Well, what the hell does she need this shack for? She's over 100 years old. No, of course, the house itself is strong. But you need to do this. I need a man in the house. But what about her? I didn't do any repairs before, but now even more so. And now, instead of resting, I'm going to work here. And so I got fucked up at work. You'll also have to spend it on vacation. Mom, you're an adult. Really? What are you doing here? Garden. Well, we can buy a cottage closer to the city, and you'll have a vegetable garden. There was no one left, and there's nothing to do here. Let's go to the city, huh? Not really. I've lived here all my life. I'm going to die here. I rolled my eyes wearily. And this, of course, was not ignored. Don't roll your eyes. I raised you alone. It was hard for me too. Well, I did it. Now you can help me too. Yes, Mom. It's okay. I had to agree, because it was useless to argue with her. I've only had a chance to enjoy myself for a couple of days. I was lying on the couch, tapping into my phone. I read books, helped my mom around the house without really straining, but in general I didn't get tired. However, when the third day came, I realized that I needed to do the main things. There's nothing pleasant about being stuck on the roof in the Z position all day long, and especially in the heat. I was so exhausted all day that I collapsed into bed immediately after dinner. I didn't even have the energy to sleep on my phone. My back, as they say, came out of the chat, so I had to lie on my stomach. I was lying flat, listening to the measured ticking of the clock, and I was almost asleep when suddenly I heard some strange sound. No, it was clearly not a watch. It sounded like footsteps. Did Mom get up? I sat up and listened. The house was quiet. I won't hide it. It made me scared. But he soon reassured himself that the house was still old and most likely reacted this way to temperature changes or structures shaking. The night passed like a second. I swear I didn't sleep at all. Today I had to work on the roof again, which I didn't really want to do. But on the other hand, if I finish everything today, then all that remains is to repair the fence, and that's it. Of course, there are still things to do, but these are small things. Due to yesterday's exertion, there was pain in the muscles and back. However, it could be endured. I was busy with the roof until late at night. Really, it was worth it. The repairs were finally completed, and I made it just before the rain started. After hastily rinsing off after hard work, I climbed into my bed and passed out as soon as my head hit the pillow. I didn't even have dinner. It wasn't the crowing of a rooster or sunlight that woke me up, but a crash. I immediately jumped out of bed and looked around. Actually, nothing has changed. Everything was in its place. I could have walked around the house and found the source of the noise, but I wanted to sleep much more. Before I went back to sleep, it occurred to me that I should ask my mother about the extraneous noise. Suddenly she heard him too, but that thought slipped my mind this morning. I slept until about 10 a.m. Then I lay in bed for a while, had a hearty breakfast, and went outside. The fence did not require the same lengthy repairs as the roof. A few hours later, I was done with him. I got free around 4, after which I packed my bag and hurriedly went to the local beach. At the sight of the local pond, it pinched somewhere in the chest area, and immediately the events of bygone days came back to mind. How the boys and I jumped into the water from a diving board. We dived like a pike off a cliff. It was like gathering around a campfire. And now what's going on? A couple of old men are sitting on the other shore with fishing rods. I'm lying on an old burnt-out towel. That's all. The old people will live to see it, and there will be no one else to come here. For some reason, this picture really spoiled my mood. So much so that I hardly talked to my mom for almost the rest of the day. He was stupidly wandering in his thoughts. I don't know why, but that day, or rather evening, I didn't feel like sleeping at all. Maybe because of my worries. Mom fell asleep to the steady murmur of the TV. I was sitting in the kitchen drinking a fucking cup of tea. However, the body took its toll and still wanted to sleep. I would have slept like this until the morning if it hadn't been for the fucking seagull. I had to get out of bed and practically grope my way outside. I didn't turn on the light, or I'd wake my mom up, and he shouldn't have. The cellar lid was open in the kitchen. Bitch, if I'd fallen in there, or what if Mom had fallen through there? I don't know why I thought about it at that moment, but I decided to check right away if she really fell into the cellar. Turning on the flashlight on my phone, I quickly descended the stairs and, to put it mildly, was stunned by what I saw. Footprints were clearly visible on the steps. It feels like whoever stepped in there had trampled in the mud before. There were just a lot of questions in my head, but the only thing that came to my mind at the time was that Mom was going crazy. Yes, it may not be so noticeable, but age takes its toll. I don't know. Maybe she's controlling her madness in front of me, so she doesn't give herself away. When I went down to the basement, I swore loudly, and there was a reason for that. All the walls were stained with black and brown mud. There were clods of earth and a couple of broken cans on the floor. "Dima, what are you doing there?" someone shouted from above. I screamed in surprise and dropped the phone from my hands. "Come down and see for yourself," I shouted. Mom didn't argue with me, but sauntered down to my cellar. "What is this?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "I wanted to ask you something." "Are you kidding? I don't know any more than you do." "Show me your hands," I demanded of my mother. "You've lost your mind completely. Show me your hands." I had to demand more insistently. Mom, apparently, realized that I would not leave her alone, and reluctantly pulled her hands out of her pockets. And I must say, they were clean. But if it's not her or me, then it turns out that someone broke into our house. The thought sent shivers down my spine. That night, my mother and I couldn't sleep for a long time and decided to put the kitchen table on the cellar lid just in case. In the morning, I had to move the table back to its original place. Mom and I were drinking tea and trying to keep up the conversation, but the words seemed to stick in our throats. As for Mom, she didn't know what to talk about with me either. And at lunchtime, she generally went to the neighbor. I also decided not to just stay at home, but to find out from the locals what this statement is all about. Maybe it has something to do with the high mortality rate in this village. But my idea was unsuccessful. As luck would have it, I didn't meet anyone on the street. And it started raining. Moreover, it did not drizzle, but began to pour like a bucket. When I got home, I found that no one was at home until now. Apparently, Mom is still staying with a neighbor. Okay, he'll come back later. Moreover, why would she come home in such bad weather? She came only in the evening. We sat down to dinner, as usual, but I couldn't get a bite in my throat. I don't know how my mother felt, and communication was still not going well somehow. Actually, from that day on, we began to communicate less and less. And here's another thing that happened. I noticed that Mom was watching TV late. Although I always used to fall asleep around 10 p.m., I used to jump up at night from any rustle. Now, I wanted to spend the whole night on the phone. But at first I fell asleep as soon as my head touched the pillow. And the worst part of the whole situation was that I was counting the days until I left. The May holidays are over, and the next scheduled vacation is only 4 months away. So I won't see my mother again for a while. My conscience tormented me, because she had lived a long life, and it was unclear how long she still had to live. And I'm so bad if I want to get out of here as soon as possible. We spent the 4 days that remained before departure practically apart from each other. And only on the last day, or rather, the evening, they decided to have a drink. Mom cooked duck soup, wrapped the cutlets, and took out homemade liqueur. We relaxed noticeably under the alcohol and stayed up until 1 o'clock in the morning. At first, Mom started yawning, and then I rolled a couple more glasses and followed her example. We had a few drinks and then went to our rooms. I don't know how long I slept, and I would have slept until the morning if it hadn't been for my body's needs. With a little reluctance, I got out of bed and left my room. As soon as I walked out the door, it immediately became clear that there was clearly something wrong in the house. I flipped the switch, and as soon as the dim light of the lamp illuminated the room and part of the kitchen, my heart began to pound in my chest. There was something black on the floor. I searched the room and part of the kitchen. My heart thumped in my chest. There was something black on the floor. Armed with my phone, I shone a flashlight into this dark spot and recognized clods of earth in this spot. "Mom! Mom!" My scream cut through the dead silence, but there was no response. "Mom, can you hear me?" I had to shout even louder. However, it didn't do any good. No one was going to answer me. And then I realized that I was alone in an empty house. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I hoped that my mother had gone to the bathroom or was fast asleep, but it was unlikely that this was the case. The porch light wasn't on. She usually always turned on the light there if she went out into the courtyard in the middle of the night. Besides, she doesn't sleep very well. Cautiously, on tiptoe, I went out to the kitchen and turned on the light already here. And while I was crawling to the light switch, I saw that the door to the cellar was open. Damn. I couldn't help but snap out at the sight of the mess in the kitchen. Apart from the open lid, I was surprised that the chairs were lying on the floor. Bits of trash were scattered all over the kitchen, mixed with the ground. There were long black stripes on the walls. For example, if you smear your hand in soot and run your fingers along the wall, the result will be about the same. I already felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. Fear literally paralyzed my body. I've never experienced anything like this before, not even close. And despite everything that was happening, I tried to calm myself down. After all, something had to be done. There was a frightening sight waiting for me in my mother's bedroom. Her bed was empty. In general, it looked as if she had left for a while and would be back now. The pillows were disassembled. The blanket was thrown back. The slippers were not there. When I realized that she could still have gone into the courtyard, I immediately ran there. But the yard was empty too. I checked the toilet, the barn, and the chicken coop. Mom was nowhere to be found. She seemed to have disappeared through the ground. I concluded in the same second. An unpleasant chill made me shiver. Through the ground. The cellar. She couldn't go anywhere else. It seemed to me then that my mother was there. The only question is, in what condition? There was nothing to do. I had to go and check. I shone my flashlight into the black space of the cellar, and I felt in my gut that being there would not please me, to put it mildly. Carefully, I began to climb down, and fortunately, I didn't find anything unusual. I didn't find it until I realized that I had been going down for a very long time. 1, 2, 3 steps. There is no end to them. He should have been in the cellar a long time ago. In an instant, the thought occurred to me that it would be nice to take a look up. Lifting my head, I saw that the exit was several meters high. What kind of nonsense is this? How can this be? Am I dreaming? Mom made some strong tincture. That's what I'm imagining. I don't know why I didn't suspect anything strange at the time. And ignoring common sense, I decided to move on anyway. Now I remember these events with horror, and I understand that everything could have ended much worse. And I'm just truly lucky. I monotonously continued walking up the stairs. He even stumbled the moment he stepped onto the floor. The cellar was completely ruined. It wasn't even a mess. All the twist cans were piled on the floor and mixed with dirt, and the shelves were simply chopped into splinters. As I recovered from the shock, I gradually became aware of the situation. Mom obviously couldn't do such a thing. But how did it all happen? And while I was standing there thinking about all this, something cold and heavy landed on my shoulder. There was a faint hope that my mother was standing behind me. That's why I turned around, suspecting nothing. The long, ugly face was 20 centimeters away from me. 2 huge, coal-black pupils pulsed and stared unblinkingly. A mouth of inconceivable size. Black saliva dripped from time to time through the long, sharp teeth. The brain could not understand what was really happening. So I stood in a stupor for a couple of seconds, and then I screamed hysterically. I came to my senses only at the moment when it tightly clasped icy fingers on my shoulder, and it growled deep inside. That's when it dawned on me that I had to save myself. I don't know where I got so much strength from back then. The first hand shoved the thing aside with all its might, and my legs carried me to the exit. I've never run as fast in my life as I did at that moment. At first, everything was fine. I was rushing out of the cellar like crazy. But soon, something changed. Footsteps sounded behind him. It was chasing me. I understood this, and my body somehow carried me to the exit even faster. If I had stumbled or hesitated then, it's even scary to imagine what would have happened. I've never understood the expression second wind, and only then, as I approached the exit, did I feel a surge of strength. I literally took the last few steps in one jump and jumped out of the cellar. And then he immediately dropped the heavy wooden lid. Before I slammed the cellar shut, I saw the face of this creature. I'll never forget him. It didn't cost him anything to catch me, but fortunately his reaction didn't let me down. The last thing I did to restrain this freak was to tip the huge oak table onto the lid. And right at the same second, there were loud, superhuman blows from the cellar. Most likely it was pounding on the lid with its palms and trying to get out. Without hesitating, I quickly gathered up my belongings and rushed to the station. The first train will pass here at 5 in the morning. Well, I don't care. It was a cool night. I paced the station. I smoked one by one, tried to move more so as not to freeze. But I had no desire to go back from the word at all. I won't describe how I got on the train and got home. Memory seemed to have replaced this episode. I don't even remember getting on the train. The most interesting thing started when I started looking for my mom. I had several phones of my fellow villagers in my phone, just in case. I called them when I was at home and described the situation in all the details, without hiding anything. I honestly thought that they would take me for a madman, but contrary to my expectations, this did not happen. It turned out that those people who had recently died, mostly from a heart attack, were found at home, or rather, in the cellar. And everyone, without exception, had an incredible mess in the cellar. No one paid much attention to this, except for the villagers themselves. The police waved them off, as they did not see the corpus delicti. But it was different with my mom. They didn't find her, even though I've taken all possible measures. I immediately wrote a missing persons report to the police. He also contacted the search and rescue teams. Unfortunately, the search did not bring any results. I can't even bury her. I don't even know where to find her body. I really regret that I did not insist on her moving to the city. But I felt that there was nothing for her to do on this collective farm. Sometimes I have such thoughts that suddenly she ran away. She just ran away from home that night and wanders somewhere, but still alive. However, common sense says otherwise. It's unlikely that she managed to get away from this creature unharmed.